The night sky above Meridia Prime burned with an unnatural, sickly green light. Massive alien warships hung like metallic nightmares, blocking out stars and hope. Commander Yunji watched from the central command tower as entire cities disappeared, beneath waves of destructive energy. The collective had been planning this invasion for decades. Their technology was beyond anything the Meridian civilization could comprehend. Massive ships that could reshape matter, weapons that could destroy entire planetary ecosystems in moments, and a ruthless strategy of complete annihilation. Hyun Ki, a young communications officer, frantically worked to maintain the last remaining communication links. His fingers moved across holographic displays, searching for any possible escape route or communication channel. Around him, the command center, was a chaos of panic and desperate action. "Transmission systems are failing," he shouted to Commander Yunji. The room shook as another massive explosion rocked the planetary defense complex. Dust and broken technology rained down from the ceiling. The Meridian civilization was an ancient one. They had explored thousands of star systems, developed technologies that seemed like magic to younger races. But against the collective, they were like children facing a hurricane. Their shields collapsed within minutes. Their weapon systems became nothing more than expensive decorations against the invaders' overwhelming firepower. Outside, entire cities vanished in moments. Skyscrapers that had stood for thousands of years turned to dust. Millions of lives were erased in single moments of terrible brightness. The planet's atmosphere began to change, toxic clouds spreading from the massive weapon impacts. Commander Yunji knew they were losing. Every defense mechanism had failed. Every strategy had been countered with terrifying efficiency. The collective didn't just want to win. They wanted to completely eliminate any trace of Meridian existence. Hyun-Ki discovered one final communication channel. It was weak, barely functional, but it might be their last chance to send a message to the universe. His hands moved quickly, encoding a desperate transmission that would travel through the vast emptiness of space. "This is Meridia Prime," he spoke clearly into the communication system. "We are under total attack. Our civilization is being erased. To any who can hear this, remember us." The command center was falling apart. Explosions created massive holes in the walls. Emergency systems failed one by one. Commander Yunji looked at Hyun-Ki, a strange calm settling over her features. They both knew their time was ending. In the last moments, Hyun-Ki completed the transmission, a simple message of survival, of hope, sent into the infinite darkness of space. He didn't know if anyone would receive it. He didn't know if anyone would care. The collective's ships moved with mathematical precision. Each weapon strike was calculated, each destruction planned with cold efficiency. They weren't just destroying a planet. They were erasing a civilization's entire history. Massive energy beams cut through planetary defenses like they were made of paper. Entire continents transformed into molten landscapes. The planet's core began to destabilize, promising complete planetary destruction within hours. Hyun-Ki watched as the last communication systems died. Commander Yunji stood beside him, her hand briefly touching his shoulder. No words were needed. They both understood the complete finality of their situation. In the final moments, Meridia Prime became nothing more than expanding dust and radiation. Millions of lives, thousands of years of culture, scientific achievements, and dreams, all vanished in less time than it takes to take a breath. The collective moved on, leaving behind nothing but destruction. Their massive ships continued their journey through space, hunting for the next civilization to eliminate. And in that moment of total darkness, a single transmission traveled through space, a simple message from Hyun-Ki, a desperate hope that someone somewhere might hear their story. The universe continued its silent, cold expansion. Stars burned, planets formed and died. And somewhere, in the vast darkness, a message of hope continued its journey. No one could have predicted what would happen next. The signal arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning in a small research facility outside Seoul. David Park, a senior communications specialist, was drinking his third cup of coffee when the unusual transmission appeared on his screen. Most would have dismissed it as random noise, but something felt different. The message was fragmented, broken into thousands of tiny pieces. It carried strange mathematical patterns and energy signatures unlike anything Earth had ever recorded. David called his team, and within hours the entire facility was buzzing with excitement and tension. Initial analysis showed the transmission originated from a region of space previously thought to be empty. The signal contained complex data packets that hinted at an advanced civilization under massive attack. Mathematical sequences suggested a desperate communication from a dying world. Government agencies were quietly notified. Military intelligence, usually slow and bureaucratic, moved with surprising speed. Satellite networks were redirected. Advanced radio telescopes focused on the signal's origin point. Something big was happening and everyone could feel it. Colonel Jamin from military intelligence arrived at the research facility by midnight. He reviewed the data, his experienced eyes catching details others might miss. The transmission wasn't just a random signal. It was a precise, calculated cry for help. "We might be looking at first contact," David explained, showing complex holographic projections of the signal's structure. "But it looks more like a distress call from a civilization under total attack." The military's initial response was cautious. Satellite networks began tracking potential threat zones. Space monitoring systems, usually dormant, sprang into unexpected activity. Researchers worked in shifts, decoding fragments of the mysterious transmission. What they discovered was both exciting and terrifying. The message suggested a massive technological threat moving through space. An entity called the Collective was systematically destroying entire civilizations. The transmission carried technical data about weapon systems that seemed impossible by current human understanding. Global leadership was informed quietly. No public announcements were made. Military research facilities around the world began preparing contingency plans. Scientists who specialized in advanced theoretical physics were called into emergency meetings. David's team worked around the clock. They discovered the transmission contained not just a warning, but potential technological blueprints. Strange. Mathematical sequences suggested advanced defensive technologies far beyond current human capabilities. Colonel Jamin understood the implications immediately. This wasn't just about scientific discovery. This was about potential survival. If the threat described in the transmission was real, humanity needed to prepare quickly. Research facilities were converted into strategic planning centers. Universities redirected technological research. Engineering teams began exploring theoretical defensive technologies suggested by the alien transmission. The world didn't know it yet, but humanity was preparing for something bigger than any conflict in its history. A potential cosmic threat was approaching, and only a few knew the true scale of what was coming. Satellite networks expanded. Military budgets were quietly increased. Advanced research programs that had been dormant for years suddenly received massive funding. Something was coming, and humanity was going to be ready. David Park continued analyzing the transmission. Each decoded fragment revealed more about the mysterious civilization and its attackers. The more they learned, the more they realized how little they actually knew about the universe. Colonel Jamin assembled a special task force. Military strategists, quantum physicists, communication experts, and advanced technology researchers were brought together. Their mission was simple but impossible: prepare humanity for a potential cosmic conflict. The transmission continued its silent journey through research facilities. Each analysis revealed new mysteries. Each decoded fragment suggested humanity was about to face something beyond its current understanding. No one knew exactly what was coming, but something was definitely approaching, and humanity was starting to wake up. The first human response came from an unexpected place. Jae Sung, a brilliant engineer working in a small laboratory near Busan, developed something that would change everything. His technology wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was an adaptive system that could predict and counter alien attack patterns. Military leaders were initially skeptical. How could a small team of researchers create something that could potentially defend against a civilization capable of destroying entire planets? But Jae Sung's demonstration was nothing short of remarkable. The adaptive technology worked like a living organism. It could reshape itself milliseconds before an attack, changing its molecular structure to absorb or deflect energy. Traditional weapons became useless against this new defense system. It was as if the technology could think, could predict, could survive. Preliminary tests showed something extraordinary. When simulated against recordings of the collective's weapon systems, Jae-sung's technology didn't just defend, it learned. Each simulation made the system stronger, more adaptive, more intelligent. Global research centers began collaborating. What started as a small project became a worldwide effort. Scientists from different countries shared information, worked together in ways they never had before. The threat was too big for national rivalries. Military strategists developed unconventional approaches. Instead of traditional warfare, they studied psychological disruption. How do you fight an enemy that thinks entirely differently? The answer wasn't more powerful weapons. It was unpredictability. Jae-sung's team created communication systems that could introduce chaos into rigid technological networks. They studied the transmission from the dying civilization and discovered something crucial. The collective operated like a massive, inflexible machine. Humanity's greatest weapon would be its ability to adapt, to think creatively, to introduce unexpected variables. Space exploration programs accelerated. New ships were designed with Jae-sung's adaptive technologies. They weren't just vessels. They were living systems that could change, learn, and survive. Traditional ideas of spacecraft design were thrown out completely. The first test missions were remarkable. Prototype ships could survive attacks that would have destroyed any previous human technology. They could reshape their hull, redirect energy, and even predict potential threat zones before they emerged. Colonel Jae-min watched the tests with a mixture of excitement and fear. They were preparing for something no human civilization had ever faced. An enemy that had destroyed countless advanced civilizations was now facing something it couldn't understand: human creativity. Research facilities worked around the clock. Every department, from quantum physics to psychological warfare, contributed. They weren't just preparing a defense, they were developing an entirely new approach to survival. Communication experts developed systems that could introduce logical disruptions into the collective's communication networks. Mathematicians created algorithms that could break down the alien technology's predictive systems. Psychologists studied ways to introduce uncertainty into a seemingly certain technological system. Jae-sung's adaptive technology became the foundation of humanity's defense. But it was more than just a technological solution. It represented something fundamental about human nature: the ability to change, to adapt, to survive against impossible odds. The world didn't know it yet, but humanity was preparing for a conflict that would define its existence. Traditional ideas of warfare, of survival, of technological development were being completely reimagined. Military training changed. Soldiers were taught to think creatively, to introduce unexpected variables, to understand that flexibility was more important than raw power. Traditional military hierarchies were dismantled in favor of more adaptive command structures. Space became a battlefield of ideas, not just technology. Humanity was preparing to fight an enemy that had destroyed countless civilizations by being something those civilizations could never be: unpredictable, creative, alive. Jae-sung continued his work, knowing that everything depended on his team's ability to think beyond traditional boundaries. They weren't just developing a defense system, they were redefining what it meant to survive. The collective was coming, but humanity would be ready. The universe held its breath. The first encounter happened near the outer edges of the Orion spiral arm. Captain Yuna's experimental ship, equipped with Jae-sung's adaptive technologies, detected the massive collective fleet before traditional sensors would have even registered their approach. 3 human ships and 2 surviving Meridian vessels moved with unexpected grace. They weren't trying to fight. They were trying to understand. The collective's massive warships approached, expecting total surrender or immediate destruction. What happened next would be remembered as the moment everything changed. Instead of traditional weapons, the human Meridian team introduced something the collective had never encountered: complete technological chaos. Quantum communication signals began broadcasting random mathematical patterns that disrupted the alien network's core communication systems. Kira, the surviving Meridian commander, worked alongside human specialists. Her knowledge of the collective's previous invasion patterns combined with human unpredictability created a strategy that defied all conventional warfare principles. Small drone systems, looking like nothing more than floating metal cubes, began releasing complex signal disruptions. Each drone was programmed to act independently, to make decisions faster than any centralized command could predict. They moved like living creatures, introducing uncertainty into a system built on absolute predictability. The collective's first response was confusion. Their massive weapon systems, designed to obliterate entire planetary defenses, suddenly found themselves unable to target properly. Communication networks began to fragment. Complex battle algorithms started producing nonsensical responses. Captain Yuna watched her ship's adaptive systems work in real time. The hull could literally reshape itself milliseconds before an energy weapon would strike. What should have been a fatal attack became nothing more than a minor energy transfer. Psychological warfare mixed with technological disruption created something the collective had never experienced. Humans weren't just fighting. They were playing. A complex game where the rules changed constantly. Communication signals carried complex psychological triggers. Mathematical sequences designed to introduce doubt into the collective's rigid decision-making processes began spreading through their network. It was like introducing a virus into a perfectly ordered machine. The Meridian survivors provided crucial information. They understood the collective's technological hierarchy, and humans found ways to exploit every possible weakness. Each communication, each technological interaction became a potential weapon. Massive collective warships, which had destroyed countless civilizations, suddenly found themselves unable to coordinate. Their supposedly impenetrable communication networks began to collapse from within. What looked like a simple technological disruption was actually a complete systemic breakdown. Kira explained that the collective functioned like a massive, single-minded organism. By introducing multiple points of uncertainty, humans were essentially creating internal conflicts within their network. Each disruption was like introducing antibodies into a previously unchallenged system. The battle wasn't won through overwhelming force. It was won through creativity, through the ability to think beyond established patterns. Humans were showing something the collective could never understand: the power of individual choice, of unpredictability. Small human and Meridian ships moved with impossible grace. Traditional weapons became secondary to complex signal manipulations. Each movement was a potential communication, each energy pulse a possible psychological trigger. Hours passed. The collective's massive fleet, which had destroyed entire civilizations, found itself paralyzed. Their weapon systems became useless. Their communication networks fragmented. For the first time in their known history, they experienced something close to fear. Captain Yuna understood they weren't just fighting a battle. They were demonstrating a fundamental difference between humanity and the collective. One believed in rigid control, the other believed in endless possibility. As the final communication networks of the collective began to collapse, something extraordinary happened. The humans and Meridian survivors weren't seeking total destruction. They were offering a chance for the collective to understand a different way of existing. The universe watched. A new chapter was about to begin. Humanity had found its turning point. Hyunki, the communications officer who had sent the original transmission from the dying Meridian world, watched from the command deck. Humans and Meridian survivors worked together, their technologies merging into something entirely new. The remaining collective ships found themselves surrounded, not by weapons, but by complex communication networks. Each signal carried not just disruption, but understanding. Humans were offering something the collective had never experienced: a choice. Captain Yuna's strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of total destruction, they would show the collective an alternative. Their adaptive technologies began rebuilding the alien network, introducing concepts of individual choice, of learning, of growth. Massive ships that once destroyed civilizations now became silent. Their communication systems, once rigid and destructive, began to change. It was like watching a machine learn to breathe for the first time. Kira, the Meridian commander, understood the deeper strategy. This wasn't just about winning a war. This was about changing an entire civilization's understanding of existence. Humans weren't conquering, they were teaching. The collective's core systems began to fragment. What seemed like destruction was actually a complex reconstruction. Their technological network, which had destroyed countless civilizations, now became a pathway to understanding. Scientists worked around the clock. Every communication, every technological interaction became a chance to introduce new possibilities. They weren't just fighting an enemy, they were offering a new way of existing. Jae-sung's adaptive technologies played a crucial role. Systems that could learn, that could change, that could grow became the key to transforming the collective. Each moment was a potential point of transformation. Days turned into weeks. The collective's massive fleet, once a symbol of destruction, began to change. Their communication networks started showing signs of individual thought, of potential, growth. It was like watching a machine learn to think for the first time. Hyun-ki remembered the desperate transmission he had sent years ago. What had seemed like the end of everything was now becoming a new beginning. Humanity had done something no civilization had ever achieved. They had offered understanding instead of total destruction. The rebuilding began slowly. Meridian worlds, which had been nearly destroyed, started to recover. Human ships assisted, their technologies helping to heal wounds that seemed impossible to mend. It wasn't just reconstruction, it was cooperation. Global communication networks on Earth celebrated. They had faced an impossible threat and found a way forward that wasn't about victory, but about understanding. Humanity had shown that strength wasn't about destruction, but about the ability to adapt and grow. Captain Yuna understood the true victory. They hadn't just saved themselves. They had offered the collective a chance to become something different, a chance to learn, to grow, to understand the value of individual choice. Scientific research centers worked to understand the transformation. How could a civilization so focused on destruction suddenly begin to change? The answer was simple: by showing them another possibility. The collective's remaining ships became research vessels. Their massive technological networks, once tools of destruction, now became pathways of exploration and understanding. It was a complete transformation that no one could have predicted. Kira looked at her human colleagues and saw something she had never expected to see again: hope. The civilization that had nearly been destroyed was now part of something new, a partnership that went beyond traditional ideas of war and peace. Jae-sung continued developing adaptive technologies, but now they weren't just about defense. They were about communication, about understanding, about growth. Each new system was a potential bridge between different ways of existing. As the final collective ships were transformed, something extraordinary happened. They began to communicate not as conquerors but as learners. The universe watched as a new kind of civilization began to emerge. Humanity had done more than survive. They had shown that understanding was the most powerful weapon of all.